Hello again everybody and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Today you join us in the beautiful island of St Kitts and Nevis, and we're off to Princess Juliana on the island of St Martin for a special preview just prior to the release of the SimWorks Studios PC-12 for Microsoft Flight Simulator, releasing the 6th of December 2023 at 12 noon GMT. It will be available on various platforms like Contrail, and eventually will arrive in the Microsoft Flight Simulator marketplace whenever it's approved by Microsoft in the future. Therefore, on the release initially on the December the 6th, it will be a PC only package, and then they'll be looking to address a couple of issues for console users. It's going to be €24.99. And here she is, the Pilatus PC-12, of course, made in Switzerland. It's made for the mountains and can handle short field operations as well. If you enjoyed today's video, hit like and subscribe. Share your thoughts, any tips and tricks down in the comments section below, because I'm interested to hear what you guys all think too. SimWorks Studios, of course, have been working away really hard over the last year at creating this, and been using experience from real-world pilots, the operating manual and all that kind of thing too. So it's as deep a simulation as you can get for an aircraft like this, and it might well be the most detailed single engine prop in Microsoft Flight Simulator to date. Exterior model wise, as you guys can see here, really wonderful details, and we've also got the pitot heat covers, and some chocks, in addition to some windshield screening, which you guys can see currently. Now, the version that we're taking a look at today is a beta version. It's not the final release build, so some features are still yet to be completed. On release, however, there is going to be a 4-blade propeller option and a 5-blade propeller option. They've also done this rather lovely cabin area, as you can see, which stretches all the way down to the back of the aeroplane, with seats and folk positioned in the way. We'll explore this in a little bit more detail when we're in flight. But to begin with, let's turn our attention to the flight deck, and we'll remove the covers for that. Now, as you can see, I've got the TDS GTN XI model installed, and that is automatically then fed into the cockpit environment, but it also works nicely with the working title GNS. I think it's the 530 from memory. Exquisite detail across the entire flight deck environment, up to all of the screens and the controls, and a really nice level of detail put into this flight deck, as you can see here. All the circuit breakers are pullable, they do work, they are functional, and we'll discuss that in a short while too. The little window here for the captain also opens, and there is a noticeable sound change when you use it. The armrests on the seat area lift up, there's a little tablet there as well, and the rudder pedals wheel in and out as a nice little touch to the aeroplane too. They've also rather handily included a interactive checklist within the aeroplane too, and you can learn the aircraft by working through all of the different checks, and the little I buttons allow you to toggle between all of those to identify which ones are which. All of the electrical systems on board the aircraft are simulated, as well as the pressurization systems on the bottom right of our screen as we look at it too at the minute. SWS have also configured some rather nice cabin elements. The booze drawer, always good to know where that is. And we can close the flight deck door and open the lavatory as well, which is here. Also has a little cabin divider, so it separates the cabin area from the rest of the flight deck and toilet areas, and we can close the door when we're ready. Don't forget to then also latch it like so, and all the animations done really nicely there, to be fair, from those. So what we're going to do now is we're going to spend a couple of minutes just working through the checklists in the aeroplane and getting the battery systems turned on, and then we'll be thinking about engine start. Starting the engine, then we're going to jump into the flight deck briefly in order to move a condition lever forwards to supply the engine with fuel as it's starting up. And we'll listen to all the sounds because SWS have done a really nice job with this. Here we go. Alrighty, so in the flight deck, watching the ignition temperatures rise and all that sort of thing, if we were doing it in the flight deck throughout, but obviously we started outside to show you guys the animations and the sounds from the outside as well. Now, hot starts are a potential issue with this, so if you were to, for example, move the condition lever to ground idle before starting the engine, you might see the ITT spike over its limits, and then you would get an engine fire warning indication. Something to kind of bear in mind there. Then we're going to turn our attention to the overhead panel, and
Essential bus, generator 2.
If we select Gen 2 first instead of Gen 1, then what we'll end up with is a slow battery drain. So start up and powering up with the aeroplane, we will start with Gen 1 first from what I've been told, then Gen 2. When we shut down at the other end of our flight, we do it in reverse, so it'll be Gen 2 off, then Gen 1 off. And then we're going to continue with all the checklists to get it ready for taxi. Now, while we're sitting here burning fuel, what I've done is I've just moved the time forwards ever so slightly, and that is in order to show you some of the emissives inside the flight deck. Really nice panel work, and all of the emissives are rather nice in the flight deck. And to just very briefly demonstrate the circuit breakers, we've got the transponder on standby at the moment, and we've set that squawk to 2000 just for the purposes of today. Now, when we look down here and we select ATC transponder 1 circuit breaker and pull it, the first transponder goes offline. Transponder 2, however, is still on. We can look back down, push it back in again, and that comes back online. You might also notice various different modes. So we've got VOR modes at the moment on our sort of compass. What we want to do is select nav until it says GPS, like so. And when it flashes like that, it's because there's a mode mismatch. So we then look over to the first officer's side and we select GPS 1 for him as well, or her, and then they match up quite nicely. Just from the outside with the light in a slightly faded mode, I can show you guys all of the emissives here and the reflections against the surfaces of the aeroplane with the lights too, whilst we sit on the ground. Next up then is the pusher test, and currently we've got a little warning light for that there. So you have to have the engine running. Thanks to Alex at SWS for explaining the system here, because it is an interesting nuance to the aeroplane that we need to kind of learn and understand. Engine running, gen on, and flaps 15, that's set. Then we're going to press pusher test. Up here, that's in. And we're going to then advance the throttle in order to trigger it. We've got the park brake on. When the yoke pushes forwards, there we go, press and hold pusher interrupt on the yoke. which is that one. The pusher CAWS extinguishes, and we can then move the yoke like so. And then after 5 seconds it will come on again. Test complete. Then we release the button and release the pusher test push switch on the overhead panel. Done. What I will say though is currently in this preview version the animation isn't quite complete, and they want to tweak it even further to make it a little bit more realistic. So that function might look a little different on the final release version. Down here we're going to make sure our trim indications are all set as well for our departure. And we can set all of our lights up as required. Park brake still on. So it's a very short hop to Princess Juliana just to show you a number of features in a fairly detailed preview first look of the aircraft as best as I can, as I'm still learning it, and there are still functions to be added into the release version that we won't access in this preview package. But all round, this is the very first experience of an SWS product for myself, and I've got to say I've been mighty impressed with what they've done so far actually. I know a lot of people have said that the Kodiak has been very, very good. PC-12 can fly up to 20,000 feet, and it can also cruise at maximum cruise speed of 280 knots, so it's a really fast aircraft. I think the Royal Flying Doctors Service in Australia use some of these PC-12 NGs or MGXs. I think the NGX is a slight tad quicker as well. Climb is going to be at 150 knots. We're going to use IAS mode for the climb, and we're just going to go for an example cruise altitude of 6,000 feet today, so we don't need the pressurization system. However, at the hold point here, I'll just kind of talk about it very briefly. If we were to set our cabin altitude, what we would do is pick an option. So 6,000 would be about here. We just twizzle the knob accordingly. We've also got a manual control here, and we can also do a dump, a depressurization, but we'll leave it in auto and we'll keep it guarded for the flight. We can also change the temperature as well to try and regulate that, and ECS would be on automatic unless something goes wrong. Now of course, in relation to how this aircraft works, we can use NDBs, VORs, all that sort of thing. If you've got the TDS GTN-XI, then you get this beautiful screen here, though that is a kind of a premium feature, separate thing that you have to pay for. I believe they're also working at inputting the PMS-50 product into this as well, which of course has a free version attached to it. So flap 15, we're going to move the condition lever to flight idle. You'll hear all of the pitch change, ITT, torque, NG, all of that starts to change. And when we start to apply power, we will notice the prop governor kind of working against us a little bit as we move through the power range. Just sort out my Tobii eye tracker so that that's ready for us to look around rather nicely, and we will start to release the brakes and smoothly apply power. To takeoff power. Set. Speed to life, 80 knots. Gently back. And with the positive rate we can go gear up. Does have a flight director. We can also turn on the yaw damper. We can arm nav mode ready, and we get the indications from the autopilot telling us which way to turn and fly, and then we can head on up. Through 100 knots as well, we're going to go to flaps 0, clean the aircraft up, and then we're just going to help the nose, help the aeroplane accelerate to 150 knots before then committing to our climb, which is about here. So with that in mind, we're going to go speed mode, autopilot engaged. And it's got it. Look at that. So working quite nicely. We'll hold 150 knots through to our cruise altitude of only 6,000 feet for the purposes of today. And I should have also synced the heading bug there too. It's quite nice to hand fly this aircraft as well. The autopilot works rather nicely just to help take that pressure off. And in flight it looks and sounds really nice. A couple of different livery options available between the 4-blade and the 5-blade propeller variants as well. I've been enjoying a few of those. I'm sure many other variants will appear on, say, flightsim.to and that kind of website after release 2. And it climbs pretty quick at about 2,000 feet. And if we just change the power setting, what it would do there, as you could see, is it just drops the nose slightly in order to try and maintain that speed that we've selected. Make sure we've got 6,000 armed, and the aeroplane will level off. And we can just allow it to accelerate up to our cruise speed today as well. So there goes the speed accelerating away. Speed mode's dropped off, we're on out hold mode now as well, and nav is guiding us via the GPS. One thing that's really good about this TDS GTN XI, if you're using that, is it gives you all the glide range to various airports in case of engine out, and that's pretty cool. We're going to fly over the beach at Princess Juliana onto, I think it's runway 10 from memory. And we've got the TDS GTN XI configured for the RNAV approach, the GPS approach, runway 10, but we will hand fly most of it. Now, of course, if we were going above transition altitude, we could press standard, or if we need to change the QNH, we can just do so by twizzling the barrow dial there. If we were flicking onto an ILS approach, then we could twizzle the OBS dial accordingly. Lots of options for lights in the aeroplane, so when we're flying at night time we can turn the cabin lighting on, we can vary that, and we can also vary the really nice flight deck environment as well, all based on what we want to configure the aeroplane to look like to give us the best possible experience. I promised you guys a little look in flight at the toilet. Now, once we go in, it's a lot of toilet roll. Right at the very back here we've got push to flush. And the sound accompanies that, whether the lid's open or closed. At the very back of the aircraft, depending on what loading you've created, you can notice the baggage filling up. There's also a cargo door light which can illuminate at the push of a button. With the VOR tuned in, we can see with the VOR mode, by clicking nav, changing between ADF, VOR and GPS. We pop the course in of 096, it's given us 30.9 DME to that VOR, and it's given us obviously the guidance for that VOR should we want to fly a VOR approach. But we're going to remain on nav mode, because I've come out of that, it reverts away from nav mode there. And then we're going to work through 3,000 feet. So when you're 1,000 below your target altitude, you'll hear a little noise telling you that you're almost at that selected altitude, and same with descent as well. And just like the other modes, we can descend with speed mode if we want to, or we can use trim, or even hand fly the aircraft. Best way to learn these kind of aeroplanes is to try it all and see what works best for you. Down we go, nice smooth 1,000 foot per minute. We can change that on the fly to 4,000. Because we're in speed mode, we've got that automatically armed. And we'll just watch and listen to see what happens next. There's the altitude alert. And the annunciator for alert as well. Trim's working away down there, you can see that flashing on and off as the aeroplane's trimming itself nicely. And the weather in Princess Juliana is actually a QNH of 1018. So we'll just amend that accordingly as well before we level off. We'll make sure the first officer's side matches as well. Now in speed mode, we're asking the aeroplane to hold 210 or so knots. If we idle the throttle or pull back on the throttle, the nose will pitch down because the aeroplane will try and maintain that. And look at the vertical speed there increase. Now it goes without saying, if you've pressurised the aircraft, say for example your cruise was at 18,000 feet today or 16,000 feet, we would need to make sure that we wind that back to match the airport elevation altitude. Now this is pressurised ever so slightly because we've set it just to kind of show it working. You see now it's going to depressurise to match sea level. If we wanted to do a rapid depressurisation, we would do cabin press, flick guard, press dump, but we don't need to do that. As we said at the start of the video, the SimWorks Studios Pilatus PC-12 will be available at launch via Contrail, via IndyBuilds and on Sim Market as well. And it's going to be priced at €24.99, and then at a later date in the future, eventually the Microsoft Flight Simulator Marketplace. There's the altitude alert tone, 1,000 above, 1 to go, however you like to say it. And now at 1,700 feet, just going to work to allow the speed to just bleed off ever so slightly now. So we're thinking about our approach. With that, we've followed some of the checklists. Pop the lights on, inner separators on, icing as required, lights and signs. Make sure the parking brake is off. And then we'd make sure we're in the correct mode for our approach as well. So manually find the aircraft on final approach. We've got everything set as required. We've gone on to the VOR modes for today just to show you guys that, because we've just been watching GPS, haven't we? We've checked all our lights, signs, we've got inert sep on. And we spoke about the pressurization panel a few minutes ago. The flight director will be a bit confusing, so we'll get rid of that. And we're just keeping an eye on our speed currently. So, short final, yaw damper is off. Holding about 15 psi. We can drop it to about 10 now, 9 to 10 psi. Weather conditions are a little bit unfavourable, and as we cross the fence, a little bit bumpy there, we're going to idle the throttle, looking ahead and bring in the power back. A little gust just caught us. Holding it off the runway. And down. We want to make sure we've got lateral control of the aircraft before we engage. Reverse. And then at 50 knots, which we've just passed quite quickly, we would exit reverse and then just apply brakes. But the aircraft stops really nicely without having to use reverse prop too much anyway. And then we'll just vacate the runway. Now, if you're a seasoned PC-12 pilot and you're lucky enough to fly for a living, then I may have made a couple of mistakes throughout the approach, or I might have done stuff differently to what you understand should be the norm. Now, I'm still learning the aeroplane, and that's obviously the reason for that. So try not to be too critical in the comments if you know better. We'll pop that to ground idle, otherwise we're going to accelerate away really quickly, and we can pop the transponders to standby. We can head over to the checklists as we taxi in, and we can just make sure that we've sorted all of this prior to parking and covering the shutdown checks. Overall then, I've been incredibly impressed with what SWS have managed to create with the PC-12, and I'm sure lots of you are going to really enjoy it as well. Actually, it's a fantastic product at a very, very reasonable price for the amount of in-depth simulation that you get. The quality of the product itself for Flight Sim is remarkably good for the price, so Can I recommend it? What do I think? Then it's an absolute yes from me. Really, really nice bit of kit, and something a bit different to the sort of flying that I often do as well. Gen 2 first, then Gen 1.
Generator 1.
ITT stable and fuel control lever to shut off. We pop the beacon light off, really amazing sounds, and then the EPS can go off. Control lock just there can go on, and then the battery switches and the passenger oxygen can come off as well. The passenger oxygen, by the way, folks, is just in here, that little dial there, and there we have it. The Pilatus PC-12 from SWS for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hit like and subscribe, share your thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for some future live streams, perhaps with this aeroplane as well. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon, take care.